Italian say Sayam. Thank you to UNODC for inviting me to participate at this important event. And thank you also to the governments of the Kingdom of Bahrain and France. First, let me congratulate the Kingdom of Bahrain on its new law on alternatives. It's very encouraging. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from British Columbia, Canada. The question I would like to try to answer in a few minutes is why so many attempts to implement non-custodial measures fail. Of course, the answer is complex, and every jurisdiction has its own particular circumstances and obstacles, but I will try to explain from my point of view and experience some of the most common pitfalls. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Firstly, in general, there is a public fixation on punishment and on the need to make sure that offenders feel the pain of the crime they have committed. The public expectation is that the justice system exists to inflict punishment on criminals. Few people are convinced that community-based sentences are sufficiently punitive. And for the most part, politicians and leaders have to listen to public sentiment. What this means is that there needs to be a widespread and sustained information campaign on the importance of giving offenders a second chance, to explain why imprisonment itself does not achieve anything. Offenders will one day return to the community, and it would be good for them and their family if they could be supported to live a good and law-abiding life. The public needs to see the success stories of the non-custodial sentences in news media, on television, and to hear them on the radio or witness them in public events. Also, increasingly, the economic argument has convinced people for the need to look for alternatives. Sometimes using the cost-benefit analysis of prison is useful. Secondly, many countries have perfect legislation, but lack a comprehensive implementation plan to include which agencies are responsible and how much funding is required for each part of the plan. Different government ministries should work together in coordination with each other to assist in implementing alternative sanctions. So police, prison, probation services, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Families, also Ministry of Interior, and other agencies such as those dealing with drug addiction. Those organizations should cooperate at a high level to establish policies and procedures, as well as at the level of individual cases. The third reason for failure of non-custodial sanctions is the inadequacy of the main agency that administers non-custodial sentences. And in many countries, this is the probation service or something similar. It's important to build trusted leadership and capacity in that service, or it will not be successful. You need leaders who are capable of making their case to government as well as other donors to find the necessary funding and support, and who can explain the benefits of their agency to the public. Those leaders need to recruit people who can supervise offenders in the community, who understand the job, and who care about their clients. Supervisors need resources like transportation, vehicles, motorbikes to visit offenders where they live to make sure they are not going back to crime and losing their way again. This supervisory work takes effort, patience, time. Some of the relationship building with clients can be made by text and by phone, but you cannot underestimate the importance of personal contact and connection between the supervisor and those being supervised. A common problem is that some probation services lack the capacity in rural areas, which is where many offenders come from. So it's important to think about outreach methods, how to reach those people who live out of the bigger cities. In terms of the capacity and credibility of a probation service, technology can play a very important role, such as using forms of electronic monitoring. The fourth reason for non-custodial sentences failing is a lack of capacity and support for civil society and local government units. The successful implementation of non-custodial sentences depends to a large extent on the relationship between the probation service and civil society. Civil society has the connection with the community and therefore can help with monitoring of community service orders. Eventually, finding employment for offenders helps them to support their families, helps them find purpose in their lives. So it is very helpful if they can start working in the community as part of a non-custodial sentence. This is all part of the process of social integration into society, which is the ultimate goal of any sentence. Civil society organizations and local government units can also facilitate contact with family, visits with children, possible reparations to victims and families. However, very often the local government units are overburdened, they're understaffed, and they lack expertise in how to deal with offenders, so they need help too. The fifth and final reason why non-custodial sentences generally fail is related to the role of judges and the courts. In many jurisdictions, there may be provisions for judicial discretion to allow judges to determine the level of guilt and individualize the punishment to decide what is best for the offender from a range of programs, depending on the needs of the offender. But this does not happen in reality. In many countries, judges are not trained, nor are they accustomed to using discretion in this way. Judges also lack information on the offender and their circumstances to determine the most suitable program. Insufficient pre-sentence reports and insufficient social inquiry reports are provided to the courts, and many are not timely nor well researched. So how is the judge expected to find out about the offender? Judges also lack information on what services and programs are available in the community in order to refer offenders to them as an alternative to prison. If judges were more familiar with services and programs in the community, and they had confidence that they work, and if they get feedback on the programs themselves, then judges might use those alternatives more often. Judges need good recidivism data to base their decisions on. And if they can see a program works, they will be more inclined to refer to it. Judges in so-called problem-solving courts tend to be more involved in the supervision of sentences and overseeing some of the supervision itself to make sure offenders are making progress. But most judges do not have problem-solving roles. In any case, there is nothing to stop judges from asking to be kept informed about an offender's progress and to see them back in court for regular updates in their case. In conclusion, societies invest a lot of money in the prison system, but with the problems of overcrowding, as well as growing evidence of the harmful impact of prison, the advocacy for the rights of prisoners, and the huge cost of imprisoning people, governments are looking increasingly at the advantages of using non-custodial sentences. We need to invest more in our probation services and make sure the staff are well recruited, trained, and supported to do their work. It's only when there's a credible community-based supervision mechanism that can be shown to work that the public will realize the advantages of them and judges will be willing to use them in court. Finally, it's important to develop both a systems implementation plan for non-custodial sentences, as well as a personal plan for the offender, so they know exactly what life is going to look like. When the offender can understand their current choices and their future, they are more likely to feel motivated and inspired to change. Thank you very much for your attention.